growing the community as you have done, the MLOps community from, obviously nothing to over 21,000 members today, lots of diverse backgrounds. Do you have any recommendations for people who would like to build their own community in whatever their area of interest is?
Yes. So first off, communities are incredible. I think they're very special and they pay dividends many times over. It is hard work to get a community that is bought in. And I liken it to catching lightning in a bottle almost because you have to get people interested and spending time and hanging out in the community, helping each other. And community, for those who are wondering, like, oh, what is a community, right? Let's define that first. I would consider a community where you have many to many interactions. So it's not just like one person to many people, like what a podcast or a video would be, right? A community is where you have a lot of people speaking with a lot of people and anyone can join in. And so that's why you traditionally see them on forums, but we also have our in-person meetups that you can go to and you can have those kind of interactions.
And you have a podcast too.
We also have a podcast, yeah. And so, but the podcast, the fun thing is that I don't think people join the MLOps community because of me. So it's not like a creator driven community, which is really good in a way, despite like my ego really wanting it to be that people like me so much. They're like, let's go to his community. Like a lot of other creators have that. I don't have that at all. I'm just some guy that's part of the community and trying to help out, making sure there's not spam being shared all over the place or you don't get like approached by people trying to sell you tools in these places where the many to many conversations are happening. And it just so happens that I also really enjoy podcasting. And so I have a podcast and we have like a blog post where anybody from the community can go and write on our blog. But in the forums and getting people bought into hanging out in a place and fostering that sense of community, I just think you really have to put in an absurd amount of effort, especially in the beginning, to get it off the ground. Because if you don't put in that effort and you don't nurture it in the beginning, it's almost like the snake eating its tail. You get people that might show up, but then there's not really anything happening. It's not really adding that much value. And so then they may go dormant. And then the next group or the next person that shows up doesn't see much value happening. And so it never really gets off the ground, and I've seen that happen with a lot of community efforts, and so that's what I would say. If you're trying to start a community, you have to put in an unreasonable amount of effort, and especially in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. It is a tough thing to do, but it sounds like the way that you have this set up where you're trying to minimize the ego and have it be less about the content creator, more about the community supporting the community, and you ensuring that spam is minimized, that selling is minimized, um, and probably on occasion other unwelcome behaviors are minimized. Um, yeah, it sounds like the way to go.
Yeah, and I would say, sorry, just to like double click on how to put in that effort or how to get people involved early. One thing that I realized I didn't mention and it helped me a ton. I'm not sure if it always works for everybody in every scenario, but for me, one thing that I noticed got people more involved and more active in the community was instead of me answering everything or me going around and giving my thoughts on things, because I was in a really nice situation. I didn't know the answers to a lot of stuff, but when people would come into the community, I would get to know them. And then if I had a cool conversation with them and then a question around whatever these people's expertise were, it came up in the community, I would try and get that person to answer. And so it would either be me going to that person and saying, "Hey, I think you might know the answer to this. Can you like chime in here?" Or I would just tag them in a thread and say, "Oh yeah, I was just having a conversation with John about this." And that way others felt like, "All right, it's not just me asking questions and then Demetrius answering.